All right, we're going to tackle a really tough question today, one that a lot of people have probably thought about. Have some of the biggest names in modern Christianity actually lied to the world? We're going to dig into the facts, the faith, and the controversy, and try to look at it as fairly as we can. And this question, it really cuts right to the heart of something a lot of people feel. On one hand, you've got these absolute giants, Billy Graham, John Stott, Reinhard Bonnke, and Benny Hinn, men who without a doubt impacted millions and millions of lives. But on the other hand, you hear these serious accusations, these claims that they've been deceptive. So how do you even begin to square those two things? So here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at why these leaders are so controversial in the first place. Then, we'll zoom in on the specific criticisms against each of them. After that, we'll get real about what it even means to lie. And finally, we'll wrap up with a practical guide for how you can think through these things for yourself. Let's start with this whole question of trust. So, why all the controversy? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is the world we live in now, right? The digital age. An accusation can pop up online and spread across the globe in minutes. And a lot of the time, there's no context, no fact-checking, and that leads to a whole lot of confusion. You know, when you dig into it, most of these accusations tend to fall into one of three main buckets. Sometimes it's just a simple misunderstanding. Other times it's a real, genuine theological disagreement, where smart, faithful people just fundamentally see things differently. And then, of course, there are the times when it's just plain false rumors. Knowing which bucket a claim falls into is absolutely the first step. And this brings us to a really central idea in Christian teaching. God is the only one who's perfect. Every single human leader, it doesn't matter how respected or influential they are, is still human. They're going to make mistakes. Their thinking can change over time, and they can hold views that other totally sincere believers just don't agree with. We have to remember their humanity to have an honest conversation. Okay, with that foundation laid, let's dive into our first two figures, Billy Graham and John Stott. Now, for these two, the main criticisms really weren't about personal scandals or anything like that. They were about deep, complex theological issues. So, Billy Graham. This was a man respected all over the world, known for his integrity, but he did face some serious heat. One big one was ecumenism, basically his willingness to work with a wide range of Christian denominations. For his critics, that felt like watering down the gospel. Then, later in his life, he made some comments that people interpreted as being more inclusive about who could be saved, which really rattled traditional views. And of course, his close friendships with politicians, especially Richard Nixon, made some people question his judgment. It's worth noting, Graham himself admitted he made mistakes on that front. Then you have John Stott, a real deep thinker, a major theologian. The big controversy around him was his view on annihilationism. Now, that's the belief that after judgment, the unsaved don't suffer for eternity in hell, but instead they simply cease to exist. That is a huge departure from traditional teaching, and it sparked a lot of debate. And just like with Graham, his push for Christian unity was seen by some not as a strength, but as a dangerous compromise. All right, so let's shift gears a bit. We're moving from these deep theological debates to controversies that are more about methods and, miracles. When we talk about Reinhard Bonnke and Benny Hinn, the criticisms start to sound very different. Reinhard Bonnke was famous for these absolutely massive crusades, especially in Africa. We're talking crowds of over 1 million people sometimes. The impact was just undeniable. But the questions started to pop up about his methods. People asked, where's the independent verification for all these spectacular miracles? And others wondered, when you have hundreds of thousands of people coming forward at once, how deep and lasting are those conversions? These weren't really theological arguments, they were questions about accountability. And that brings us to Benny Hinn, who, let's be honest, is probably the most controversial figure of the four. The criticisms against him are long and they are serious. It starts with his teaching of the prosperity gospel. It continues with claims of miraculous healings that have little to no medical proof. On top of all that, there have been major questions raised about his finances and transparency, and he's had a history of making some pretty out-there doctrinal statements that he himself later had to walk back. Okay, so we've laid out all these criticisms, but now we have to get to the absolute core of our question. When we use a word as strong as lied, what do we actually mean? Because the definition here, well, it changes everything. See, a lie isn't just about being wrong or having an opinion someone else disagrees with. The absolute key here is intent. To lie means to intentionally deceive someone. It's knowingly saying something you believe is false, specifically to mislead other people. And that is the distinction we have to make. It's so important. On one side, you have proven intentional deception. On the other, You have what we've been talking about: doctrinal differences, honest questions about the best methods to use, and public debates. Are those really the same thing as lying? We have to be really, really careful before we say they are. So, with all this complexity, how are you supposed to figure this out for yourself? Instead of just giving you our analysis, let's talk about building a framework for your own thinking, using some biblical wisdom as a guide. The first principle is this idea to test everything, hold fast what is good. This isn't about just sitting back and passively accepting what you're told by anyone. It's a call to be an active participant, to use your mind, to evaluate what you hear, and to hold on tight only to what proves to be true and good. And the second big idea is just as crucial. It's a warning, really. Do not put your trust in humans. Why? Because they're fallible, every single one of them. The best, most sincere leaders will still get things wrong sometimes. The idea is that your ultimate, unshakable trust should be in God, not in any person. Okay, so if we put those two ideas together, we get a pretty clear 3-step guide for ourselves. Step 1, don't just blindly follow anyone, no matter how great they seem. But step 2 is just as important. Don't blindly reject them either. And step 3 is the anchor for it all. Take what you hear from everyone and hold it up against the standard of Scripture. So, after looking at all of this, where do we land? Let's bring it all together for some final takeaways, because the answer here isn't a simple yes or no. It's a whole lot more nuanced than that. Here's the bottom line, as we see it. It's a fact that these men had a positive influence on millions of people. It's also a fact that some of their teachings are deeply and legitimately debated by other Christians. Many of the criticisms raise valid questions that are worth thinking about. And it's probably also true that some of the accusations are just plain wrong or blown way out of proportion. But does any of that add up to proof that they intentionally lied to the world? That's a very high bar to clear. And at the end of the day, maybe this is the most important takeaway of all. The goal isn't really about being the judge and jury for public figures. It's about building our own foundation. Because a faith that's built on solid, enduring truth will always, always be stronger than a faith built on the shifting sands of human personalities. So we're going to leave you with a question to think about. This whole exercise isn't just about looking back at the past. It's about building your future. So what steps can you personally take, maybe even starting today, to make sure that your own faith is one that is constantly being tested, sharpened, and made stronger by truth?